That's Lobstertainment. This is one which, from what I understand, this was not one of the well-received episodes of the show. And
At
this
the
was, time? Well, I swear I'd look at, like, lists of, like the episode ratings and rankings, and I think this one used to come in the bottom when there was just 4 seasons, like pre-season 5, the films, I mean. And so what's interesting is that, in saying that, and despite this being quite a season 2 premise, I really like this episode.
Yeah,
actually.
This is almost the ultimate season 2 premise, but with the season 3 philosophy and aesthetic draped
Creative
over it.
Ethos, yeah.
It really does execute in a way that an episode like, say, The Honking or something like that with a weird sort of premise that doesn't go anywhere.
Even the first Zoidberg episode.
Yeah.
Which is not terrible. It's fine.
Yeah. That's probably more appropriate. This is the better extrapolation of that season 2 Zoidberg episode, the Crustacean in Love, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this one is it shouldn't work on paper, as in if someone gave you the episode premise, you'd be like,
that's stupid.
What is this? But then if someone gave you the script and you read it, you'd be like, this really yes, funny. Let's forward this through. Why does this work so well? This is hilarious. There's so many little elements that are it's hard to pinpoint because there's so many things, right?
Yes, yeah.
But when you watch it, you get it. In a way, it's not just a sort of vain appeal to the history of, say, Hollywood entertainment and stuff like that.
No.
It's also a genuinely I guess in the way those old movies and even the way they're revered, as these sort of very universal emotive tales and moral fables.
Yeah.
It sort of does that within a sitcom premise in such a way that is remarkable.
Yeah.
Initially you'd think of this episode as a sort of skippable run-of-the-mill sitcom show sort of episode, but it's not at all. Somehow it's funny and deeply moving at the same time. A Zoidberg episode, it befuddles me, honestly.
Yeah, partly it's the strong characterization of Harold Zoid.
Yeah,
this is a really entertaining character. I think it's the Calculon episode, along with, I guess, Bender should not be allowed on TV, but I think he's got more screen time in this one even.
Yeah, just probably a little bit
Bender's
more.
Antics are really, really funny.
Bender's hilarious in this episode, yeah.
And then you've also got just it's Zoidberg's a sympathetic character without being too much of a buffoon like he is in Crustacean in Love, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Your sympathy for him is also sort of harmed by the fact that he's such a buffoon in it, whereas this one, it's more endearing in this one.
The Star Trek reference in Crustacean in Love might hold that back a bit in that sense. Where he's trying to, they're trying to keep it to the sort of beats of that Run Amok episode.
Where it ends with the fight,
Yeah, and Zoidberg sort of acts in that way. And also, I guess, the of its time, dating, social critique, sort of Friends, the sitcom, that sort of thing. Where Fry's navigating Zoidberg through that sort of sitcom logic,
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, it's a bit more down to earth and human, funnily enough.
Yeah.
They sort of humanize the what's Zoidberg's race called?
The Decapodians?
Yeah, the Decapodians. They humanize Zoidberg in this episode.
For a little yarn about the entertainment industry, and I think every sitcom wanted to do one at some point. I mean, that show, The Critic, is just all about that. This is the Critic episode of the show, even.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a good show, actually.
It is a bit like The Critic.
Darkman has an episode like that, I'm sure. I think The Simpsons may have had an episode like that, which may have been that Critic crossover.
A little bit, yeah.
I think a lot of these shows tried to do Hollywood, the entertainment business, trying to get famous, recognition, superficiality, that sort of thing.
A bit of Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, hey. And then they try to make it a lot of those takes on Hollywood are just really obvious. They're trying to point out that Hollywood's superficial, and you know what the heads of Hollywood are doing? They're not giving a fucking shit about your little 20-minute television episode. It's just one of those things.
On television,
yeah, exactly. Which they
to those Hollywood jokes.
That's just money.
Television is bullshit.
Yeah. So it's just that's why there's only so much revelation you can get from one of these television sitcom, animated or otherwise, episodes doing something on Hollywood in the entertainment industry. But what that Lobstertainment does, it's more, because it's not set in the present, obviously. It just like uses it as sort of the scaffold for kind of this story about Zoidberg, his uncle, and a megalomaniac actor, Calculon.
Yeah.
And then Ben sort of manipulating it all.
The
for
sort
his
of
own
robot
ends.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah. No, it's fun stuff, and I just think it's one of those silly sort of nothing premises in a way, but it's just executed with such love.
It's so well,
Yeah.
I definitely agree. It delivers that thing you mentioned, which falls flat when sitcoms typically do the showbiz polemic or whatever.
Yeah.
This episode delivers it with like a sort of such a heart, where you're just like, even if you haven't seen the show and you happen to see this episode in like syndication or something, it would still hit as hard if you know who Zoidberg is. This has a weird way of like existing outside, how we're watching the show at the moment in order.
Yeah.
You could watch this in isolation, and it's just a great 20-minute episode of television.
I used to watch it quite because we had season 3 on DVD, so I'd actually watch this one quite a lot. It was a hit with everyone. You know what I mean? Like if I had a cousin or whatever staying over, we'd watch it. It was a hit. We all like Zoidberg, so it was just a hit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This and Insane in the Mainframe and Bugalo were ones they'd put on because they're on the same disc. I'm just going to assume.
Sure.
Yeah, because Bugalow's after Cyberhouse Rules.
Yeah.
And Insane in the Mainframe is after that.
They're all pretty good episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just one of those. It was just very likable and solid, and dare I say, it's one of the funnier episodes of the show. Like the whole production, like the Magnificent Freeze, one of the funniest fictional films of all time.
It's so good.
Like the incompetence of the end result, but then like the production of Harold Zoid cutting like perfectly good takes because when you think about it, the extras are doing a great job because Howard Zoid doesn't actually give them any direction at the start. They just like innocuous White House stuff. And he starts screaming at them because they're not being funny enough or silly enough. And then when they're being silly, he's still like, cut, throw a pie or two. Because like he's like stuck in like the holographic silent era. Like when films are moved on from and they moved on to like, well, it's films again by the time they're actually making whatever. There was a brief period where they were using
I mentioned it when we were watching the episode. As a kid, I was sort of hilarious at like Professor Farnsworth is like, Harold Zoid, I love that guy. And then he pulls out that big like 78, RPM laser disc of a... It's like a silent movie, but in the future they had quality worse than television, like we had watching the show.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious. Futurama's, the humor in it, like, it's like The Simpsons, where, infamously, I probably said it before, the way I think about The Simpsons humor is summarized in that critic episode where Homer's watching the, football in the groin, and he's laughing his head off, and he says it works on so many levels.
Yeah.
That's how I think about The Simpsons humor. It's always funny because, like, a joke will work on at least 4 different levels. But Futurama is like a joke will work on 11 different levels, you know?
Yeah.
Futurama sometimes it goes into that space. An episode like this, too, like, every joke, like, a person will find something funny because there's something funny about it. But everyone will find something different funny about it. Because there's at least 11 jokes going on,
Yeah.
This is a great example, I reckon, this episode. Like, it's just the show being funny. More, like I said, it's got human things to say and stuff. But more or less, it's just, like, hilarious, right?
It's like, do you remember I briefly brought up jokes working on multiple levels, even just a handful. The previous episode we talked about... Oh, no, sorry. A couple episodes before that, I believe.
Which episode?
Oh, in Icecatraz.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, like in Icecatraz, I pointed out how I liked, in our retrospective on that video, I discussed how much I liked how they conclude the thread of the penguins via the reappearance of the orca.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why that's funny is it's one of those things where, like, Leela can only complain so much because it's like, well, at least the orca's fed. Like, it's another animal.
It's ecological.
It's a callback to an earlier reference, the orca actually being how Bender gain the amnesia in the first place.
It's the revelation of Chekhov's gun, but it also makes sense because
the fact that the orca just must have been right there waiting for them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, there's a whole, and it's just like it was stalking them, and it's just like, I got your penguins, and it's like the satisfied look on the orca, how satisfied that orca must be, like.
No, you're right. I never really noticed that till I watched that episode the other day. I was like, yeah, that's very on point, like, as a conclusion bit. It's very ecological in fitting with the theme of that episode.
Yeah.
Futurama's, when you really dig into the surface of like how it's being constructed, you realize how smart of a show it is. Like, you know, it gets accoladed as a smart show, but even those accolades are sort of superficial.
Yeah.
It's actually smarter than it's perceived to be, I think.
I agree, and it's because like people's idea of it being smart, it's like people think, oh, Futurama's a smart show, but there are also other smart shows. I don't think there are that many other smart shows. Certainly not in the comedy
They're always like
genre.
superficially smart.
Yeah. Like there are no smart dramas. Like who actually, like if you think The Sopranos is smart, that's it. You're not smart.
No.
Sorry.
That show's not smart in its like on the conceptual level. It's smart on the visceral level. And what I mean by visceral level is, you know how like all the shows that came after it, that so-called renaissance of television, they always have like a visceral aspect to them where it's so immediate. Maybe it's like punk rock, like, you know how it's like aping off cinematic tropes, right?
Yeah.
But it's more immediate than like cinema typically is. So I think they like honed in on that, and The Sopranos was the first show to do it.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like viscerally experiential, but all the conceptual and like narrative aspects of the Sopranos is hack.
No, you know what it is. Just in The Sopranos, and it's literally every other show that does The Sopranos. It's male aggression. They just show off male aggression in different forms, and males like it because they wish they were stronger than they are.
Yes, but it's deeper than that. It's the fact that, because when they show off male aggression,
Breaking Bad's male aggression, The Wire's male aggression, Boardwalk Empire's male aggression, True Detective's also male aggression.
I agree with you. It's male aggression, but in the sense of like when The Sopranos does it well. When I like The Sopranos, like I said, viscerally, it's when it's like them as, you know, New Jersey gangsters like bullying the union for the garbage men by, like, you know, roughing them up or whatever, and it's way more immediate and like what actually is real to life and like the sort of the woes of that sort of thing. Whereas the ongoing trope of The Sopranos is that the gangster guy is like having it out with a psychologist or whatever, and so he conceptualizes all these immediate things that should be obvious to the audience. You know, in, say, scenes where they do things like push around like garbage men and stuff like that. Like, the reason why I like stuff like that is because it's actually immediate to what you're watching. Whereas when they deconstruct it in the psychologist scenes, they can only deconstruct it through like literary allusions and allusions to philosophy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it completely conceptually, like, it's lost. It's like it has to deconstruct it for the audience, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is the trope that all those shows fall into. Like, they can't just show the actions and the consequences for what they are. They have to then deconstruct them for the audience and tell the audience what they mean with, like, you know, the history of 20th century philosophy and literary history, right? Because they're all just drawing from, like, they're all, like, deriving their stories from literature, right?
Well, literature and, like, I mean, I guess other sources, drama or...
Well, what I mean is they're stealing the concepts from literature and then, like, acknowledging it in the thing itself.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, in the case of, like, what did you say? Sorry, appealing to, like, male violence.
Male aggression.
Whatever. Yeah, male aggression. I think the problem is when they deconstruct it and they do it in that sense. Like, it's similar to, like, the Dark Knight with the Joker has been proposed amongst people from that time, you know. That sort of does that in a way, and it sort of enabled people to do that sort of shit. And I think that way myself with the Joker movie from, you know, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
It's that sort of thing, you know, this strange sort of, it's like Taxi Driver without the subtext.
Well, the Joker is that genre of television coming into mainstream films.
Yeah,
actually,
exactly. Yeah, I never thought about that, but that's...
Well, never have I until like, that sort of just clicked for me there.
That's true,
Because it is all the trash qualities of those programs. See, if those shows were pitched to a publisher or to like a on Broadway, like, you know, wherever they stage plays, it'd be thrown in the fucking bin. All those shows.
Yeah.
And I also think that if they were screened in a cinema as films, I think as acts of production and direction, even though they're allegedly just as good as films, they'd be laughed out of the fucking cinema. Like, if you actually compare them to, like, the feature films you're watching, you have a cognitive dissonance. People have a cognitive dissonance when they watch a television show and when they watch a film. They don't realise that when they think these shows look good, they don't. They don't. You're just thinking of them by as shows. If this was a film, you'd be like, this looks like shit. Why is this... If it's Ozark or The Outsider, both Jason Bateman, or even Boardwalk Empire, like, Boardwalk Empire looks like shit compared to actual Scorsese films. Yeah. Like, it looks like cheap.
Well, it's an imitation.
It looks like a direct-to-Netflix movie now. You know what I mean? Even
honestly,
it look better.
I wonder, that awful episode of Breaking Bad, you know, The Fly.
There's also awful episodes of Breaking Bad.
Well, no, obviously. But if they add The Fly, that thing, or whatever it's called, at, like, a movie festival or film festival,
like it's just a one-off film.
Yeah. Do you reckon it would get booed out? I wonder if it, like, they aired The Fly at Cannes, if it would get like a standing ovation.
Nah, it would just get middling reviews, and they'd just be like, we see what you're going for. It's kind of lame.
It's shit.
And also because insofar as The Fly has to work in people's minds where it does work in the context of the show, it's just hacky.
Well, that episode only works in the minds of people who've only read of Mice and Men in high school.
And also, like, people think it's, like, well shot, and I'm just like, grow up. Like, what the fuck are you on about? Like, it's not that well shot. Like, it's okay.
No, honestly, I watched that show before I even knew that, like, cinematography was, like, a sort of, like, an area of study in, like, intellectual science or whatever. And I honestly, I was so bored that the fact that every time they... You know how often that show does a shot where they film on glass? And they, like, clean something off glass.
Sure, yeah.
And they film it from under the glass. Like, even when I knew nothing that cinematography was an art form, I was bored of that shot. I'm like, is that all that you got? You know? It's like
shots like that. It's just like the clap now moments in the show for the fucking Reddit idiots. Reddit is a fucking vermin. Let's just get that clear. Actually, AOD. We've said that many times in AOD, so it's nothing you guys haven't heard before.
And to be fair, like, I wish I could agree with you that was a prominent sentiment, but everyone seems to think Reddit is shit.
Oh, good.
Except for the people who use Reddit.
Which is a lot of people.
Unfortunately, but I love that everyone who doesn't use Reddit thinks it's awful, because it is.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
It's just... Imagine having a fucking downvote button.
You know what I hate about Reddit?
I don't mind an upvote button, but a downvote button is just like... Grow up, like, man, fucking... I didn't like that.
Even because there's very few forums that Google shows you, like, without extensively looking about fan sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so the only things you can typically find are Reddit forums.
Yeah.
And so if you want to find, like, fan things about Reddit forums and you don't have a Reddit account and you use it on, like, your phone... You can't find anything. Like, you have to... They keep prompting you to download their fucking app.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, I want to read about the cleaners from Venus or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to download your stupid fucking app just to read a few idiots' comments.
You know what I've noticed about Reddit, and especially when I've encountered people who go on Reddit in real life? It's like, as in, people I meet in real life who go on Reddit. I mean, by default, you go on Reddit via real life. You don't go on Reddit. Maybe you do go on Reddit in your dreams. If you do, like, seek psychiatric help.
Yeah, I would agree.
But it's one of those things that they're people who, like, they never quite got to the stages... this sounds horrible, but, like, they never quite got to the stages of doing something really exceptional and great, but they always really wanted to. Like, they're not... They want to do something great, but they're not also content with just, like, living a modest life either. You know what I mean? There are some people who want to do something great. There are some people who just want to live, like, a relatively modest sort of life by their own meager sort of, relatively quaint standards. And they're not either. They maybe have the capabilities of living a great, beautiful, modest life and have that great privilege by global or historical standards. But they're like, oh, I'm not more popular. So they go on Reddit to whine. This is the men, at least. Like, I've never known... I don't know the psychological profile of women who go on Reddit, mainly because I've tended to avoid them.
You're right. Users of Reddit could, like...
Sorry, girls.
One, like, what you're describing there reminds me of the Moondog lyric, where it's like, make your mark. If need be, even make it in the dark. I always love that sentiment, because it's like, it's what you're describing. The sort of people on Reddit, they don't realize if you like, have something to say... And, like, there's no immediate audience. There's still a reason to say it, you know. Someone will find it. Like, it doesn't matter if, like, people aren't adulating you for what you're saying. Like, if it's actually true, it will find its audience. You know, that's the nature of truth, right?
I just get a lot of vibes of people feeling sorry for themselves on Reddit, and I just don't like. Look, people who are suffering, guess what? They don't have fucking time to feel sorry for themselves.
Yeah.
If you actually feel sorry for yourself,
Well,
you're a privileged stunt, and I just don't
You know
feel.
what?
I don't respect, and,
That's a
and I don't. I
key-
certainly don't feel sorry for them.
No, that's a key thing that people don't take into aspect enough. Like, like that sort of, for lack of a better word, that's sort
And
of...
as men, we're really bad at this sometimes, in my opinion.
It comes from a place of, like, non-suffering, where you're, like, you know, sort of putting the burdens of yourself above the burdens of, like, the world, you know?
And for all the talk we have about the boomers being more privileged and having more free time and money and the cost of living, that's all true. Think about your fucking grandparents' generation, though.
Yeah.
You that's not fun. Like, you do, like, even though we may have it worse relative to, like, our parents' generation, but not always, because, like, some of us are a bit younger, and, like, our parents were vaguely, like, the situation in the late 80s for Australia/Sydney was not ideal. You do hear, like, situations where it was, like, fairly similar to now.
Yeah.
So, like, Gen X didn't have it particularly easy, and that was talked about.
Well, there's
at the time
certain
anyway.
objective cases of things like lesser population in Australia and a better economic situation that are like
Free university.
Objective truths of like a better situation, but then there are like nuanced subjective truths, like where Australia at that time or anywhere was just kind of a different world, you know.
Yeah, violent.
And there were plenty of things that like would go on that just don't go on now because you know, they seem archaic.
I also think people don't realize that, and I sound like maybe too old here, and even though I'm 28. It's like, if you're able to, like, just go on your smartphone and just, like, you know, basically just feel sorry for yourself. Like, I mean, I don't even know, like, that's, like, right there. Like, if you're, like, just getting lost in the phone like that, it's like, that's such, like, an arrogant, like, just a human doing that, knowing the amount of just horrible things that are going on, even in, not just forget the entire world, you're just your home country. Like, think about, like, all the suffering that's going on, and you're just, like, sitting there like, oh, I'm not more popular on social media, oh, this sucks, bro, oh, my parents didn't get me. Your parents spoiled you too much in the first place, so it's their fucking fault, arguably, but whatever. I'm saying things that everyone probably agrees with, to be fair.
Yeah, no, definitely. Keep riffing if you
Even people my age. I do it all the time on the channel, so you know, it's nothing people haven't heard before, unless you just watched the Futurama series, in which case this might be all new to you. I apologize if that's the case. Go watch Snowpiercer if you're a teenage boy, and then go watch Parasite if you're a little bit older. Watch Snowpiercer if you want to.
It's
anyway.
Bender-esque riffing without the like revisionist writing. It's like off the cusp.
Alright, yeah. Anyway, we'll close it here because we have actually run a bit longer than Lobstertainment.
No, it's a good episode.
Thanks everyone. Oh, you go for it.
No, next one.
Perfect.